pretend you're sleeping, but just lock the door. And I remember I just heard this just bap, bap, bap on the door. And he was trying to break the door down. And scared I mean, my brother was 3 years younger than me, so I must have been, 11, 12 at the time. And he started to cry. And my stepdad was like, I'm going to come there and give you something to cry about. I remember I just, with all my might, was trying to press against the door, and eventually I got shoved out of the way. He came in. I have a scar from, getting hit across the head and the face with a belt buckle. So that was the first time, I really took an ass whooping and said, never again, never again. So it kind of stuck with me. They always say, what doesn't break you makes you stronger. And that definitely stuck with me as something that I wanted to never feel again. If it was something I can control, I wasn't going to have it again. So that instilled the need to be stronger. Bigger is better. And it kind of stuck with me till this day.
Strength, wisdom, energy, attitude, and time. Hey, welcome back to the S.W.E.A.T podcast. I'm your host, Mark Springer, and today I have with me LeRoy the Machine Walker. Welcome to the show, LeRoy.
Welcome you to the show. Thanks for having me on.
It's great for both of us to be here. But LeRoy, why don't you kind of introduce yourself to the audience and just kind of let them know about some of the accomplishments that you've had, because they are, one of them is literally no one else in the world has ever done it. So that's an exciting thing.
Okay. I started my powerlifting journey at the age of 13. Started off in a garage gym and worked my way up through football and wrestling competitively in high school, and then wanted to continue it. So I stayed with the powerlifting during college, and afterwards, like a lot of us, didn't have a pro football career, but wanted to stay competitive and wanted to stay strong. So just maintained primarily just the bench press, and then got really focused in bench press and competitive bench press and powerlifting, and worked my way up to a 675, which is a top 10 in the world all time. And later on, as age plays a factor and factored in, and didn't want to stay as competitive and on the long journey to trying to get over a 700-pound competition bench, I transitioned to strict curl. And within a year, I was able to set not only the American record, which stood for about 25 years. I was able to accomplish that and then go on to break the all-time world record, which had been in place for, I think, the last 6 years. So it's not where I thought I would end up in powerlifting, but it's definitely been a great journey.
That's awesome. And so, the podcast is called S.W.E.A.T. Obviously, we've both been to the gym today. But that being said, there's so much that goes into becoming who you are. Mm-hmm. But one thing that I want to dive into a little bit is who you were before, right? So your first time encountering a weight was at the age of 13. I was probably 12. I remember I was in 8th grade. We had a little shed behind the middle school. Mm-hmm. And there were some weights in there, and I couldn't lift any of them. Like, I was working out with the bar, right, doing bench press and feeling like I was going to die, mm-hmm. and then trying to pick a 45-pound plate off the floor to put it away. It was just mind boggling. So before you made it into that into your garage gym at 13, what was your impression of just the entire world of working out and being strong and all that?
I would say it was something I wasn't really. I think I came from a small town in Washington, Yelm, Washington, and we didn't have a local gym. I think the closest gym, and actually the first gym that I ever went to, was in a town our city, it's actually the capital, Olympia. It was about a half hour away. And I remember going there with my uncle, who was kind of my look up to, my go-to person when eventually throughout my career as it came to getting involved in everything weight. So he took me to this commercial gym. I think it was called Pac West. It was pretty much the equivalent of like a LA Fitness, a 24-hour or a Lifetime, huge gym, like 50,000 square feet. So I went there, and I just remember being, one, intimidated because I'd never been to a gym. And I've always kind of seen, the Arnold Schwarzeneggers, the pumping iron, the this and that, growing up. But to ever come to grips with it, to be face to face and see the towels, see the stringer t-shirts and everything and whatnot that was going on back in the 80s, it was both exciting, overwhelming, and intimidating at the same time. So I wasn't able to make it there often. Obviously, I was 13 years old. I wasn't driving.
Right.
So my uncle, knew that I took a liking to the whole fitness thing, what he was doing, as an amateur bodybuilder. So he had got me a couple weights and I think an easy curl bar and just some Olympic plates. And the journey began. I started in my garage. He started to show me some stuff. I wasn't strong enough to bench, the 45, the conventional barbell. So I started with the easy curl bar and then added, weights and just kind of did it, made it up and kind of did it as I, was going along. And that's kind of how it all started out.
So what was it that really ignited your passion for it?
I would say the passion was, I didn't really grow up with a father figure. I would say, a lot of people have their idols and their go-tos and their role models. I think in my life, I had a very abusive alcoholic stepfather. So I would say I didn't have people that I wanted to be like. I had people in my life that I wanted to be absolutely the fucking complete opposite of. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how the passion came from. He was severely abusive towards my mom and towards my little brother, and he was because I was more of a standoffish kid, didn't really get in trouble, kind of mind my own business. So I didn't really, not that I'm condoning abuse, but I really didn't go out of my way to kind of taunt him or put it, I kind of stayed away. I knew when he was drunk, when he was on his rages, so I would always stay away. But there would come times when he would come home late and just go and just want to go at it with my mom. And at the time, I just knew it wasn't right. I didn't really grow up and see other people's households, so I kind of felt this burden, this kind of weight on my shoulders that this is like, man, this is fucked up, but it's only going on my household.
Mm-hmm.
But what am I going to do about it? So I remember my first encounter with not being as strong as I felt I needed to be was him coming home drunk, going just crazy on my mom. And my mom had actually came in our bedroom, me and my brother's bedroom. We grew up super poor. We shared a bedroom, shared bunk beds, and she came in there to kind of hide us. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning. And so, she woke us up and she said, hey, don't worry, don't be scared. Just pretend you're sleeping, but just lock the door. And I remember I just heard this just bap, bap, bap on the door. And he was trying to break the door down. And scared my brother was 3 years younger than me, so I must have been, 11, 12 at the time. And he started to cry. And my stepdad was like, I'm going to come in there and give you something to cry about. I remember I just, with all my might, was trying to press against the door, and eventually I got shoved out of the way. He came in. I have a scar from, getting hit across the head and the face with a belt buckle. And that was kind of like my first encounter with really, I got on bumps and bruises and tips on the playground, but nothing to that magnitude. So that was the first time, I really took an ass whooping and said, never again. Never again. So it kind of stuck with me. They always say, what doesn't break you makes you stronger. And that definitely stuck with me as something that I wanted to never feel again. If it was something I can control, I wasn't going to have it again. So that instilled the need to be stronger. Bigger is better. And it kind of stuck with me till this day.
Man, I did not know that, LeRoy. I'm sorry you went through that. And I really do appreciate you being so open and vulnerable, sharing that with everybody. Because I don't know, have you ever shared that story before?
I've shared it a couple of times. I really believe, as we get older, we find just in a lot of different areas of life, I think vulnerability is strength. You know what I mean? If I share a story with you, if I share something that makes me uncomfortable and I'm like, hey, you know what, I'm going to give you this. I'm kind of make this proverbial gun and I'm going to give you the ammo to shoot me. Now, if I tell you it's going to hurt or it's going to kill me because I'm giving you this ammo and I'm giving you the weapon and you decide to use it, then you're the asshole. And I can walk away knowing, that, hey, I made myself vulnerable. I laid down like, hey, these are the do's, these are the don'ts. Well, if we can be cordial to each other and, not use this or that against each other, then we'll be fine. And some people do, some people don't. But I've learned to be a lot more vulnerable instead of so protected and so guarded, because I think it becomes this mask, just this massive mask that people want to hide behind because of fear, because of intimidation, because a lot of times being ashamed of who they are or what they've been through, and they just think it's not relatable to the average person, or so we have this mask or this massive weight that we're carrying around. And I felt, you know what, just lift it. I'm gonna hand it to you. I'm gonna let you carry it too. Now it's gonna be part of your burden, is knowing my past. And if you throw it in my face or you look at me as a lesser person, hey, I did what I did. But I at least put myself out there and was brave enough or strong enough to admit I have faults, I have shortcomings, I have things that I'm not proud of. And because we have to take the good and the bad. You can't you can't build your own mountain and be strong and proud of the accomplishments. You have to be equally as accountable and to your shortcomings, because both of whether they're great or bad, they're equally made who you are.
Yeah. Well, and another thing too, which is why I think it's really cool that you're sharing that, is because you never know who's listening on the other end or what somebody's going through. And when people have had great accomplishments, setting a world record and doing all that, the common misconception, people think it's a easy straight line to where you were. It's like, oh, there wasn't adversity. It's just genetic, right? He was born strong. What did he go through? And they don't understand that internal component of it, which I really think is everything, because there's an old saying that I really like, but it says, if you know your why, you can make it through any how. And so you had a very, very clear why as to why you needed to be strong. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people who get picked on, they get bullied when they're younger. And I don't know, like I might say most people go through that in some way. Mm-hmm. But the reaction to it really, really is the important part. And, when you've really been faced with something that's that scary, right? Because you were just a kid.
Yeah.
And a kid having to live through that kind of thing, you have a choice to make. Mm-hmm. Who do I become in that moment? Do I become someone who's going to hide, or someone who's going to really rise to that occasion and be someone who can protect others? And something that I wanted to ask you too, and obviously there's show notes when you're coming up with things, but screw them, right? Yeah. But there's still, but this kind of ties into something I want to ask you. But as you've grown, not just in strength, not just in stature, not just with your following and all that, you've been growing as a man. But who do you want to be for the people that follow you?
You know what? It sounds like you said, nothing you accomplish is usually ever as easy on the outside as it is, as it seems. Internally, we internalize a lot of stuff. I think the person I want to be for my fans is the same person I needed when I was 13. I think that's what I always try to strive for, is can you be that person you needed? I think a lot of us, a lot of men, maybe women too, that grow up without a father, but a lot of men, especially with minority backgrounds, grow up with this sense of entitlement that, like, I never had shit, so I don't have to become shit. You know what I mean? I don't have to be accountable because I didn't grow up with a father, so I don't have to learn how to become a father. And I mean, there's some truth to that, but I think a lot of it's just this rah-rah bullshit that people want to masquerade and parade around just to not hold themselves accountable. So I think, and becoming the person for, just my fans isn't really becoming something for someone else. It's just becoming the person I needed. And I feel, as we all kind of understand through age that we definitely have a lot more in common than we do differences. And I think when we can kind of find that commonality that, like, hey, I've been through some stuff, you've been through some stuff, and we start to share stories, we start to also see how we've transcended and overcame what a lot of people would say that we are only going to be limited to become. I definitely believe your past does not define who you are, and it definitely does not only lead one true road to whatever you're going to deem as success. There's going to be bumps, there's going to be turns, there's going to be dips, there's going to be closures, there's going to be, sometimes the road might get washed out because of a freakish rainstorm, but are you going to have the perseverance to keep on and stay true to your path? And along that way, you're going to be able to reach out and help other people through whether it's example or whether it's encouragement or whether it's just being, someone that can just be a good listener. I think we all have a duty to not only overcome our shortcomings, but show others the path of, not necessarily, hey, you have to do A, B, and C, but this is how I did it, and we have similar backgrounds, so if I've done it, you can do it. If one person's done something, a lot of people can do something.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I used this example before, but there's this guy named Roger Bannister. He was the first person to run faster than a 4-minute mile. And it was something that doctors said, oh, if a human being tried to run that fast, they would die because their heart would explode and everything would just go wrong physiologically. But as soon as he broke that and it was shown that it could be done, more and more and more people started breaking that 4-minute barrier. And now today you have high school kids running miles that start with a 3.
Yeah.
So it's just wild, just showing what can really happen. But again, what I think is a disservice to the world is when you have accomplished something that's truly special, convincing the people that are looking up to you that the reason why you accomplished that is because you were born special. But I really don't think anybody is. I mean, there's people that I've known through life that were very gifted, right? Very intelligent, tall, handsome, muscular, all that stuff, that threw their lives away. Right. And, if you look at, what is this person accomplished when they were just nothing but a giant ball of potential, and, they put themselves into a horrible, horrible hole, and no one can even see them anymore. And it's really sad. But then you have people that are just the complete opposite. I mean, think about like Stephen Hawking, right? He wrote books with his eyes, like pioneering the worlds of physics, just purely inside of his own mind. It's just absolutely incredible. But without like going too much into a tangent on that, another thing that I wanted to ask you was if you could go back in time, right, and have a conversation with your younger self, or even change anything, would you change anything, and what would you say?
I honestly don't think I would change anything. And a lot of people, we have regrets. I think the thing I think that makes most people stronger is not trying to run from their regrets. It's really embracing and learning it, and learning that it was really more of a lesson than it was a hindrance. When you can take your shortcomings, your things that you didn't plan for, because I think no matter what it is, I don't think anybody really maybe set out to say or accomplish and say, this is what I'm going to be, and I know this from day one. I think we all have a journey. I think we all have a path. And when you're able to learn, the messages behind those, what some people call shortcomings, learn those lessons, and, just keep continuously striving and paying forward, I think that's what it's all about. So the faster I think you can learn that, the faster that question, because it's a very complex question, but I think and what I'm trying to say is it's so simple. When you I wouldn't change anything, because everything along the way has shaped me to become who I am. And I think we were talking about this the other day. There's so many people that what ultimately society will deem as successful is probably what you never saw as what your ultimate success, your aha moment was going to be. I think there's so many people we could go down the list. If you were to talk to, I use this all the time, say Dr. Dre. I think Dr. Dre probably at one point, I want to be an aspiring rapper, I want to be a producer, and that's going to be my work. But as far as business world success, no one ever would have thought that headphones was going to be his $1 billion idea. You know what I mean? It's kind of, I think, life lessons and shortcomings and hardships put us in a position, if we can learn from them, if we can persevere, those are ultimately going to become those aha defining moments. And because most of them never happened as we anticipated, as we wanted, I think it'd be very foolish or maybe naive to once you get to that point, look back and say, I would have changed that. Because that very thing that you didn't know was going to happen is kind of what made you somewhat successful. I mean, and that's a whole nother conversation, because we could sit here and talk from a broad spectrum of what defines success, And I think the most successful people are the ones that can learn early on and define what success is to them, and not let it be dictated or defined by others.
Yeah, I think another way of putting it would be living your life day to day in line with your values.
Yeah.
And it's maybe not the most common thing in the world to be able to say that, but you really have to be able to look inside and know what's important to you, and not just focus on what other people say should be important. But like I was overweight kid going into middle school. Nickname was Drew Carey. Had thick glasses and a buzz cut, but I wasn't really happy like that because I was a just very average kid growing up. But when we moved after Hurricane Katrina to Benton, Louisiana, just a little town outside of Shreveport, I didn't really know anybody. I didn't fit in, so that was what I did. I put on that mask, and that mask was being the funny kid. Because I wasn't super smart, I wasn't athletic, you name it, wasn't popular, wasn't rich, wasn't all those things. So I wanted to try to fit in somehow. But as I was just being the funny guy, I started gaining weight, kind of eating my feelings, and it was a spiral. But there hit a point where I was not happy walking around every day in my own life because of the body that I was inside of. But really understanding that your body is something that you can change, and it adapts to the conversations that you have with it through your training, and it adapts to what you eat. Then understand that. And a lot of people, they're misled, and we see a lot of crazy stuff in the fitness industry. I mean, me and you, we like to poke fun at it sometimes because it just lends itself to that.
Yeah, it certainly does.
Spinning the barbell to warm up your wrist. But just it's kind of like change the direction a little bit to maybe something a little bit lighthearted.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you found comical that you've heard in the fitness industry that's just like advice? Because, I mean, there's people who are listening to this who work out, and they've probably encountered some shenanigans and some ridiculous gimmicks. But what are some of your favorites that you've seen?
I've never understood the slimming tea thing. And never till this day, never understood it. I think the biggest, the coach. I think it'd have to be the physique or fitness bikini model coach. I think it's crazy. I love entrepreneurship. I love people that want to be, their own boss, but it just kind of like blows my mind how with this day and age of social media that as much as the old gatekeepers that was whether it was the online the muscle magazines or the the bodybuilding magazines or whatever that were kind of the gatekeepers to kind of decide who gets the nod, who's going to be the next person. Now there's so much more accessibility to people via social media, internet, online, and I'm not going to paint this picture that online coaching or anything is bad, but I think it's funny that the same characteristics that make and the same things that make someone a great coach over the past 50 years haven't changed. However, the amount of people that think they can do, whether it's one contest prep, whether it's one powerlifting show, and they take third place out of 2 people and they think they're qualified to be a coach, just absolutely blows my mind. And I can't fault them, because on the flip side of that equation, there's people who sign up to be coached by these people. And there's so many things going on in that. It's like, one, do people not do their due diligence? Do people not, give credentials and stuff? And so I think that's why you see this whole other trend of making sure you have a blue check and all this, so you can somewhat be validated. And it's always been kind of funny to me because I've always thought validation comes through not just through your experiences, but in some ways, I think it's through your accomplishments. What have you accomplished? And there used to be this old school of thought, like if you become the best, then that's your validation. But now there's this new school of thought that, just because you've accomplished this and that doesn't mean that you're necessarily the best. And that's to me, that's very comical because there's truth to that. I think it really just depends on your discipline. I don't think the greatest basketball coaches, the greatest football coaches were necessarily the greatest athletes. I think they are often just probably the best people at understanding the X's and O's, but more importantly, how to motivate people. But at the end of the day, I think that's what a great coach is. A great coach isn't necessarily the best at the X's and the O's. I think they're just sometimes the best motivator.
Oh, yeah. And Vince Lombardi, one of the legendary coaches of all time, he said you do the best that you can with what you got.
Yeah, exactly.
that's what we got to do, and that's what we do on our own training. Because both you and I, we work out at the same gym. Like I was saying, we met with you, Preston. I think it was close to 600 pounds on a Duffalo bar on an incline bench, and I was like, what? I didn't realize Big Tex was the kind of place that it was when it came to attracting strength athletes. I just put in a Google search, gyms near me where I can use chalk.
Yeah.
And that's how I wound up there and met a lot of really, really cool people. But yeah, so this is another thing that I wanted to ask you, because I already know what my answer is for it. Mm-hmm. But what to you is the most impressive thing that you see at the gym?
The most impressive thing that I see are, I mean, if we're gonna put everything kind of in like this, as we often do, this kind of alpha male pecking order. I think if we all agree that there are certain lifts, certain things that people want to aspire to do, like I want to bench press 600 pounds, I want to deadlift 800 pounds, I want to be able to squat 700 pounds. Whatever your fitness journey is or your goals, to each their own. But I think there is this kind of unspoken pecking order. And the thing I admire about Big Tex is, so many times in the society, especially in the fitness world, people say, just stay in your lane, just do you and only worry about you. I really applaud and admire the people who will venture out. And the reason this is important to me, because something we talked about earlier, people say, who has been like your favorite type of people to train with? So that's kind of where I'm going with this. My favorite people are the best workout partners, because I get asked that a lot. When you're at an elite status, how do you find people to work out? And to me, that's kind of been like the loneliest part about being at the top of the bench press world and the top of the strict curl world. And I can only imagine it's the same way for deadlifters and squatters, is once you get to this ultimate elite status, who do you work out with? And the thing I admire about Big Tex is there are a lot of people that have no fear, or they're brave, or they're crazy, or maybe a little bit all three. And you're one of those people when it comes, and I'm not saying like you don't have great accomplishments on your own. Pound for pound, you're one of the strongest people I know. But there's not a lot of people that I can take through a curl workout and they'll come up to me, oh, that looks interesting. What are you doing? Oh, I'm just doing some hammer curls. I'm just warming up. Well, what's on the bar? 200 pounds. 200 pounds on certain bars would just feel like death to 99% of the people on the planet. But then here you come. Hey, you know what? Let me get chalked up. Let me give this a try. And then there you are. You're over in the chalk bowl. You're gonna, I'm not warmed up like I need to be, which is always the case. It doesn't matter. I could be curling 300 pounds, and you're still gonna come with this attitude. I'm not as warmed up as I need to be, but I'm gonna give it a shot. And that's probably what I admire most about Big Tex. It's not just you. I would say 70% of the people there, if they feel willing and able, that they're gonna give it an honest effort. Versus and I'm not gonna name them, I can go to other gyms, whether it's Austin or around the country, where people are just flat out, and rightfully so, I think so. There's certain weights that no matter who you are going to be intimidated. If I went to work out with Thor and he had 900 load up on the deadlift bar, I'm like, that would be super intimidating. Would I give it a shot? Maybe 50-50, depending on how much pre-work I had that day. But I think what I'm getting at is there's an overwhelming majority of people at Big Tex that will lift outside or try things outside of their comfort zone, because they have this willingness to learn or willingness to try. And I also think that's kind of a nod to some of the elites, and there's many of them that train at Big Tex, for creating, I think, if we're in a PC world, a safe atmosphere, an inclusive atmosphere. I don't think there's a lot of exclusion. I don't think there's a lot of rah, I'm better than you. I think most people really try to genuinely pay it forward, which you don't. I've been to powerlifting gyms where you don't see that. It's kind of, I'm elite, I'm here, don't bother me, stay away from me, but I think a lot of people are willing to pay it forward. And I think that comes from the mindset that a lot of people there just kind of get it. Whether it's business, whether it's fitness, whatever their endeavor is, they just get it. I'll tell people all the time, I don't care if you curl with me, if you take my methodology, because I'm learning it, and you apply it and you become better, then maybe I didn't deserve to be the best. Because we're all kind of just taking different takes on stuff that's already been passed down. None of us is none of us are out there really inventing these new methodologies, these new movements. A lot of people think they are, but that's just kind of a hybrid method of this or that. And so when I think you learn that you don't have these patents, on these workouts or these programs or these methodologies, it is best just to pay it forward because you create a more cohesive, stronger community. And I think within that creates more strength across the board on so many different levels.
Oh yeah. And I think in many ways we see something in ourselves or something about ourselves and the other people that are around us. And like anybody who's intimidated to go to the gym, just kind of speaking directly to the audience here, when you see the biggest, strongest people in there, more than likely they're going to be the most eager to give you advice because we nerd out on this stuff. We love it. It's a passion for us. And so when somebody who's new to it opens up and says, hey, I'm interested in what you're passionate about. Oh, we're all about it. Yeah. Like we want to
and
help you.
There is some fun in it. There's like, oh my gosh, you haven't tried this new 200-pound curl for reps that's going to just make your arms feel like death tomorrow. Here, come on over. Let me show you how. And, it's like there's part of it that's, there's banter. There's part of it that like, oh, you know what? You're going to be regretting you did that tomorrow. But you learn to live and see another day,
Oh
it
yeah,
it didn't kill you. It's only going to make you stronger.
And it was fun, and like you make friends. That's another thing I think is really important about people who are like, well, how am I going to stay consistent showing up to the gym because maybe I want to get in shape? Talk to the people there, because when you start to know people by name and start to make friends with the people at the gym, you want to go there because you want to see the people that you care about. And like in a world where there's remote work and people are kind of isolating their little boxes, being able to go to a place where there's a smiling face that's happy to see you, I think is really cool. And I always say Big Tex, it's like the cheers of gyms because everybody knows your name and they're just happy that you came. But it's something that I wanted to touch on really quick because I had my own answer for what's impressive. Mm-hmm. It's when I see somebody who's obviously a beginner make a statement like, I am going to gain 20 pounds, right? There's somebody who's small, they want to put on muscle, and then they do it, right? There's a guy, I'll name him by name. His name is Ruckshuck. I think you know Ruckshuck at the gym. When I first saw him, I think he probably weighed about 120 pounds, just very, very slight framed dude. But he was confident. He's like, yeah, my goal is to get to about like 180. And there's been countless people that I've met over the years that say they're going to do something and they're not true to their word. But sure enough, like after it was like a couple months because Ruckshuck usually works out in the evening. I'm usually like a morning or very early afternoon kind of guy. But I saw Ruckshuck like 3 months later and he was noticeably larger. Like I think he was about 140 and he did like get up to, I think 180. He did what he said he was going to do. And to me, that's like the coolest thing ever when somebody just makes that statement about what they're going to accomplish and then they just do the damn thing.
I 100% agree with that statement. I think a lot of it has to do with going back to kind of the culture. I think it is definitely a byproduct of the culture and accountability. I think because we have this culture and this community of dialogue and you're able to, because we always talk about, hey, what are you working on? That's kind of the first thing besides, hey, how was your weekend or how's everything going? Hey, what are you working on? How's everything? Let me rephrase that. What are you working on today? Because most of us in that community we all kind of know. Like you'll see me, okay, LeRoy's doing curls, you must be working towards this. You're doing your deadlifts, you're working towards this. We all kind of have this camaraderie where we know what we're working on, but I think that's where the accountability comes in. Because on the counter to that conversation, and this is one of the things that's just been driving me crazy. We're talking about the things that we love and the things that are funny. One of the things I think that really bothers me about other gyms when I go to other gyms or just in the fitness world in general is this idea of consistency. We hear this word thrown out a lot. Consistency. What's the key to this? I'm like, if you consistently show up and keep doing the same dumb fucking shit, you're going to consistently keep being the person doing the same dumb fucking shit. And I think yes, you can be consistent is great if you always show up. But if you're always showing up and you are not being accountable to yourself, if you're not being accountable to your word, And you're not because it's not like you have to. I'm not like I have to show up and do something for you, or you have to do it for me. But the fact that we have this community and this understanding that through conversation and dialogue, we're in a sense going to hold yourself accountable because we've said it. Just like you gave the story right now, it's very applaudable that the guy said, "I'm going to put on 20 pounds," but because we have this tight knit community and we have this dialogue, I think it's instilled that he has to be accountable because there's people that are going to check you and call you on your shit. And I think that's what I love about gyms like Big Tech's. And not that I'm knocking it, but I think that's part of the culture that I don't understand, condone, and really, I'll just come out and say it, I don't want to be a part of. There's a reason I think some people go to hardcore gyms and they stay away or they keep their distance from commercial gyms because in some sense, if we're talking about from a hardcore strength athlete mindset approach, I think sometimes those gyms breed mediocrity because they don't have a dialogue, they don't have a community. People just kind of like, like some workplaces, I'm sure there's a stat or a pie chart out there that shows, if you have more direct dialogue and conversations, you're going to have a more productive workplace. I think the same thing is true if you were to apply that to the gym. If you have people that go and they just get on the treadmill, they just get on the squat rack, and they're not accountable to holding their word that they say to themselves and that they've told other people, then they're showing up, they're consistent, but they're not being held accountable to what they said that was important to them. And I think that's the biggest fundamental difference that I see going on in fitness. And I think it's one of the things that I think is a deterrent from some people wanting to consistently stay at a big box gym versus being more embraced. And I think that's that aha moment when they come to a gym like Big Tech's, because they're like, you know what, these people, they care. If I slack, they're gonna call me on it. If I miss for 2 weeks, they're not gonna go, apeshit drill sergeant on me. They're gonna say, hey, what happened? How's everything going? There's people that will actually call you up or text or check in, which I think we need more of. With just both from a physical standpoint, from a mental health standpoint, from a just a holistic. Hey, we're friends. We're all human beings. Let's check on each other. Hey, I haven't seen you for a while. How you doing? And it's not that old, I'm trying to be in your business. It's just a genuine, like, I care about you.
Yeah, it's just, it's this funny thing called friendship.
Yeah.
Like who would have thought it? But it's very important. And it's so funny because there have been more commercial gyms that I've trained at in the past. And I could have told you the names of maybe like one or two people there. Mm-hmm. And then Big Tech's, I can tell you 100 people there, maybe more. Like there's people that, I've become really good friends with. We have each other's phone numbers. We'll go do things outside of the gym. And it's really an amazing community that's come from that. And I think a lot of it really starts at the top down because you think about the culture there didn't happen by accident because you have Rob and Esther, the owners, they live it. Yeah. They're passionate about what they do. They're passionate about being involved. And that even comes down to the equipment. Like the equipment there is a bunch of specialty stuff that you don't really see anywhere else, and it's awesome. Yeah. Like I think we had the only curl platform like in the U.S. that's in a gym.
Yeah, for a while.
Yeah, for a while. But there's just so many things that they do for the members, and they get to know the members, and that makes the members more comfortable to get to know each other. But it's just kind of like that old saying, how you do anything is how you do everything. And so the way that they built that really opens it up for all of us to do all the really cool things that we do there.
I think it's opened a lot of, in some instances, we could probably go back through conversations and say part of that gym culture has manifested into the reason that we're here having this podcast. I was thinking about it on the way here because Big Tech's, shout out to everyone from Big Tech's that's going to see this. But I think not only is there a W in win, there's a W in we. And I think because of that culture, it's one of those things where a lot of gyms, especially the biggest, take it outside of the gym, take it just in the fitness community in the world. So many people think or have this mentality, and I think it's kind of an old school mentality of if I win, that means you have to fucking lose.
Yeah.
But something I'll never forget. We have a common friend, a mutual friend, and that's kind of where I was setting up with this. And in Bedros, and I had a friend of a friend said, "Hey, I know you've met this guy. I know you've had his book. You read it. You like a lot of things that he stands for from a philosophical standpoint. Well, I happen to, have a different, kind of acquaintance. But anyways, long story short, he's going to be in Austin. He's going to come work out. Would you like to join? And then me and you got to talking, and we shared a couple similar stories. And it's that whole, that proverbial 6 degrees of separation. Here's 3 fitness influencers, like-minded people, although I would say we all have different disciplines. You have yours, Jen had hers, and I had mine. But we were all able to come together and have a commonality and understanding that this doesn't have to be me. It doesn't have to be you. And everyone can benefit. And I've seen this at other gyms in the fitness community. Recently, there's some stuff going on. And it's one of those things, sometimes it's either great because of the community, or it turns into this what could be, toxic kind of crabs in the buckets. This is my claim to this person, and you stay away, and I see it, I understand it, I don't condone it, I don't try to participate in it, because I try to keep it, open and inclusive, just as you do, and hence that's why we're able to, like minds we're able to be here, and I think for the most part, that scenario goes down the right way, 9 times out of 10. And unfortunately, we can't control everybody's agenda. But I just thought it was interesting to kind of share that, because it's the one thing I'll say about this, if people ask about the fitness journey, is how did you do it? Or how did you become you? And kind of what the topic of this is. And I think the most important thing to understand is, if someone tells you that they did it all on their own, they're full of shit. Mm-hmm. If someone, or they're full of shit, or they just have this overabundance of arrogance, because I will tell you, nothing I've done was I self-taught when it came to bench. Yes, but there is teamwork, there's effort, there's spotters, there's loaders, there's people that you go home frustrated to, that you vent to, whether it's a spouse, a significant other, a best friend, a mom or a dad. Nobody got to where they are by doing it 100% on their own. And if they tell you that, then they're delusional, or they're just a horrible person, because there's no need to take all the credit yourself. There's something to be said about being inclusive and said, hey, I did this, and, thank my team. You know what I mean? And fortunately, I think, once again, a lot of people that we share a space with in our fitness industry, our fitness journey, feel the same way. I think people would rather build each other up, not for their own self-interest, not for their own, well, if this person becomes famous, then I'm going to be, no, I don't think it's that at all. I think people just generally have an interest to see other people win,
Yeah, especially if they're people that you care about.
Yeah.
Because if you care about somebody, you want to see them do well. It's just like you hear all this stories about rags to riches people. The first thing they do is they buy their mom a house.
Yeah.
Are they doing that because they think their mom's going to then be in a better spot to make them more famous?
Yeah.
No, they do it because they love their mom.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that complicated. But yeah, like, I really love that. And there's a saying that reminds me of that: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yeah.
I don't remember where that came from. It's like just one of those like little pieces of ancient wisdom.
Yeah.
But I mean, I can tell you it's exactly true in my own experience. Like all these different things that have built up just specifically to lifting even, they've come from conversations that I've had with people at the gym who might have spotted me or might have like made friends with and talked to them. And like everybody, like you go to Big Tex or somewhere like that. I know this is turning into a massive plug for Big Tex Gym. But the kind of people there, when you're at like a hardcore gym that has that kind of community, anybody will do a form check for you. They want to. Like, oh, push your knees out more when you're in the hole in your squat. Yeah. Right? Oh, make sure that, your lats look a little bit loose when you're getting ready to deadlift. Oh, you're not really gripping the bar hard when you're bench. There's like all these little things that you can pick up on. And to get a little bit nerdy, there's these things called mirror neurons in your brain. So they help you understand perceptually what someone else is feeling when they lift. And so the more that you develop those mirror neurons, the better intuitive understanding you have for what someone is experiencing. And it's just like, it's a form of empathy, right? It's a form of intuitive empathy that you can get. But for meatheads like us,
Yeah.
When we see somebody doing like an AMRAP on a bench press or something like that, if they're relatively untrained, we will know more accurately how many reps they have left than they do.
Yeah.
Because
It's crazy. I didn't know. What did you call that?
They're called mirror neurons.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a funny story I want to share with you about you when it comes to these mirror neurons. I think we all grow up, and I don't know if you played. Did you play high school baseball?
No.
Okay.
No.
Or most of us have a story of I knew that guy, right? Like in high school, there was a couple wrestlers that I wrestled with that went on to become, they created a name for themselves in MMA. There's a couple guys that went on, not necessarily from my hometown, but people we all know that guy we played against. I played against that guy, then that guy became a pro. Well, one of those moments for me in the gym, and sometimes I think one of the greatest learning tools or lessons that I don't think a lot of people pay much attention. I think they're very dismissive because this culture, the gym culture, the society says, don't relinquish or don't try to learn from someone else's failures. Don't throw it in their face. Don't bring it up. Just let them fail and just kind of be in their own world and just kind of leave them alone. Not going to go into detail, but I remember all of us grew up with, I think, kind of this, especially, or at least I grew up with stories, like kind of these stories, these pissing contests kind of things about, the armed forces. And so a lot of us heard, like, this is what it takes to become this is what it takes to become that, sniper school this, and then there's the proverbial, I want to become a Navy SEAL.
Mm-hmm.
And so we all want to know, like, we all think we want to know someone who became a Navy SEAL, and then everybody's watched, the different documentaries of what BUDS and everything is all about. And then there's people that you meet that actually live the shit. There's actually people that have actually gone through it. And one of those people, that has his own boot camp kind of, and a whole nother level up for men is Bedros.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember seeing, I see, shout out to you, Bedros. I see these infomercials, these Instagram ads, and I see this stuff on YouTube. I'm like, holy shit, that looks hard. Because I know the amount of swimming, the amount of shit you have to do in a pool. And I probably dropped so many cuss words on here. I feel bad.
Oh, it's all right.
So these
It's
running
not
with the
kids.
logs, all these these things that you have to do. And I'm just like, man, someday. And that's one of the things for, self note I have to work on is quit looking at things and saying someday. Someday is not part of the week. You need to transfer it to make it happen. So with that being said, I would watch all these things and I was like, damn, I see all these guys. I was like, I know these guys are badasses because, yeah, am I a badass in some ways when it comes to lifting strength or one rep? Yes. But endurance strength, mile strength, swimming strength, being able to carry 200 pounds up a hill both ways in the snow and then, in 120 degree weather, there's something to be said about it. And then every once in a while you'll think, or, that there's some badass motherfucker out there doing this shit. Or that wants to do this thing, or that would just crush it. Then comes Mark. I'm like, this is one of the fittest guys I know. This guy runs his ass off. He trains hard. He can do AMRAPs forever. And we had the conversation. You're like, hey, guess what I got invited to? Guess what I'm going to go do? And I was so excited for you because it's kind of like what I'm talking about. It's like, man, the hometown kid gets a tryout with the Yankees, And so Mark's going to, so I remember you were talking about your training for it. And then you went, and then you came back, and I applaud you for a lot of reasons. One, I applaud you because you had the cojones to go do it. Two, or more, one should be you put yourself in a position, because you weren't scared or hesitant to reach out and network and say, how can this happen? How can this come to fruition? And you made that happen, which is a whole nother podcast, a whole nother story. And then you actually, put yourself to the test. You went out there and did it. But three, you were able to actually come and talk about in depth what you experiences and how I'll just kind of tease out how short lived it was, because I've had not the same experience, the same type of pressure. And I think a lot of athletes, and this is kind of getting, I'm not trying to make this an elitist thing, but as athletes on an elite level, we've had conversations like, There are times you take sponsorship monies, you don't want to back out of a contest, and you go do it and you fucking bomb. And you're like, you can't hide because you got to explain to your sponsors. You got to explain to all these people if you've documented, because there's a huge difference. And I'll say this. People say, how do you make content? 90% of the content I make, I don't make content. I document what I'm doing. I document at this point in life, this is the journey I'm on, whether it be a fitness expo, whether it be a massive strict curl or bench curl. I don't really go out there and try to, there's 10% gym fuckery. Yeah, that's created content. The other 90% is just documentation. And so there are times when I'll never forget. There was a bench press contest. I went and I bombed out. More importantly, as a coach, there was a guy I was training. He was killing it, hitting numbers. And I took him to his first powerlifting meet, and there was a lot of kids, a lot of people from big techs. And this guy bombed out on his first one. I'm like, okay. Then he bombed out on the second one. I'm like, this guy's not even in the contest. And then he bombed out on his third, and it's like I was so proud of him for making the effort, but it was one of those moments where I could tell on his face he just wanted to run and hide, because there's that, proverbial, hey, we got to face the music. We bombed out. We didn't live up to the hype. We didn't live up to the expectations. And I've had that on a personal level. All of us, I think, as of lifters, where we've had this great camp. We were putting up PRs. We were making these awesome posts. They were getting all the views, all the likes, all the stuff. And then comes time to, put up or shut up. Meet day comes. And you bomb out. And then you have sponsors like, what the fuck? We just spent $3,000 on this dude to fly out and miss all his lifts. And you just want to hide. And you had one of those moments, but you talked about it. Versus a lot of people would have just swept it, it didn't go, or something happened, but do you want to share that a little bit?
Oh yeah, of course.
Where did your courage to not only do it, but if we're going to use the word bomb, to bomb, or, ring the bell, where did that come from? And what compelled you to be so willing to share it?
Yeah, well, it's being open and being honest. But one thing, I didn't ring no effing bell. Because again, I don't want to go into too much detail because a lot of the is proprietary.
Okay.
But what I can say is I underestimated what I was getting myself into. Because I am in good shape. I play rugby. I'm very, very strong, especially for my body weight. And there's a little bit of overconfidence that I had just in my raw power going into it. And I was not ready for the miles that were going to get put in, right? There's a fitness test going into it. I did fine, right? I've been training for the test. What I didn't realize is the test was not even the beginning of the warm up, right? And so it's a 72-hour experience, probably one of the most intensive things that you could imagine. And I made it about 1/3 of the way through. But at one point, my body just started cramping. And once you start cramping, you can try to back electrolytes into yourself and just do whatever. But it just comes a point when I couldn't keep up. It's a group thing. The group is supposed to do it together. And you can't have one person hold the entire group back. And so I did what's called a rolling, right? So I got medically rolled from it. I mean, the mind was willing. The body was not. I had I don't know if you ever watched Lord of the Rings, but there's this Gimli quote. He's like, "We dwarves are natural sprinters. This endurance stuff, not so much." But it was kind of one of those moments. But at the same time, I was excited for it. I've been talking about it, and it was kind of like an ego check thing. Right, because I just made that assumption that I'd be able to dive into it and just do it. Because there's so many things where I've done that before and it's worked just fine. But I will admit that I was not prepared. I was not properly prepared for that. And so there's an old saying. It's called the 5 Ps. But proper preparation prevents poor performance. And I just thought life had prepared me for it from all the different sports that I've played. The mindset, just being through all kinds of crazy stuff, kind of building who I am. But sometimes you run into something that's going to be harder than what your life has prepared you for, and it's going to knock you flat on your ass. But then it's how do you respond to that? There was, and the other thing too, I had pushed myself so hard to get to the point of failing that the next probably 3-4 weeks, even in the gym, my lifts were terrible. I was weak. Like my nervous system was there. Like sometimes we'll do this thing, like, the grip, right? So like grip me. Let me see how you're doing. But like, we'll give it a good squeeze, and like just based on how much grip is there, you can kind of tell like how well the nervous system is firing. It'll kind of give you an indication. I had like a dead fish attached to my wrist for a while because just the nervous system was so fried. But it's good because like when you run into adversity in life, it does a great job of revealing the character that's underneath.
How long after, and staying with that theme, it's funny because I'm turning the interview.
Oh no!
How shortly after? Because I saw it. I don't know how long after was there kind of like, and you see this with these these life experiences, these life coaches, and you do a phenomenal job at that. But I guess where I'm going with this is, even though you had your medical, that's the situation, we'll call it
the cramps.
How long after did you have a chuckle? Because even though you didn't necessarily complete it, or what some people would only equate in a win with completion. However, I saw a definite direct change after that. That you still won, because even in what and I'm not saying you're a loser, but what society would say, that's a huge L because there wasn't completion. But it's one of those things where you definitely come away from it a changed person. How long did it take you to just have that acceptance that, maybe there's not guilty, but it's like you go to Stanford, you don't get a degree, you didn't get a degree. So you don't have the accolades, or you don't have the societal blue check or acceptance of, he has a doctorate degree from Stanford. He earned it, he completed, and now you get to apply that on paper or put it on your resume. Although there wasn't completion, you still had a huge win. How long did it take for you to say, I have a win and an experience that I apply across the board and make me a better person just as a man and in business? Because I know after that, you're almost went 10x in your business part of it.
Yeah, I'd say about a day. Because
that was much faster than I thought you were going to say.
No, it was about a day, because I remember because I was not I had to change my flight to come back, because this is out in California. We're here in Texas, so having to call the airline, change my flight because there was a change of plans. I wasn't going to be staying there as long. Checking out of the hotel early, doing all that stuff. I mean, it was that part. Like I was feeling like a failure for a little bit, but I was also a little bit pissed off at myself because I was kind of starting to put everything together. And then just thinking about how hard I had pushed, even not accomplishing it and getting the check mark and all that, it reminded me what hard work really feels like. And then I thought back to all these other things, like specifically relating back to business. I'm not working that hard. I realized that. I'm like, I could do so much more. And so it basically lit a fire under my ass that has stayed lit ever since. And so we've gone a long way with that partnership, and it's opened up a lot of other doors. And so things are looking good. Things are on the ups. I mean, we're having this conversation right now, and other people can hear it and see it, and I'm really looking forward to sharing it. But again, like, I want to thank you for coming on and just being fully open to show what you've been through, and even like kind of play the Uno reverse card on me a little bit, because I know that everybody who's listening to this will see something in their own life that applies, and they'll be able to take that. Because it's like you mentioned, the consistency being one of those words that kind of annoys you, because you show up and do the same dumb stuff over and over again, expect the same dumb non-results. So like anybody who's like an avatar follower and follows what I say has heard me say TCE. So, consistency is part of the equation, but the T and the E, time and effort. Because if you're not putting in effort and you're consistently showing up for a long time, nothing's going to change. But when you really are like, oh, that's what hard work feels like, and you do that consistently over a long time period, you're going to accomplish some pretty impressive stuff. So, and again, like whether it's finance, relationships, business, entrepreneurship, fitness, art, anything that you can think about, like that TCE applies. But anyway, we're going to have to wrap today's show up. But again, I want to thank you for coming out. But if you had like any words of wisdom or parting advice for people, what would you tell them? And then finally, I'll give a part 2 to that. So your final words for everybody who's listening. And then where can they find you?
I think I would say, to wrap this whole thing up in a nutshell, in both comparing and contrasting our stories, and kind of going back to the consistency thing, I think it's learning from your L's, because you probably anticipated one outcome, you had some things happen, and you were able to pivot, transit, learn from it, and continue to push harder because you came to this realization like, hey, I'm not working hard enough, and I have had to learn that there are going to be setbacks and things put in your life that you have to learn from, and you can't when that knock, back to the first, when it comes on the door, you can't run and hide, because whether you want to accept it or not, that outside of that door in some capacity is going to be this beast that they call life. And you can't run from life. You're going to have to learn how to open the door, meet it, greet it, take it head on. And then, like, you can't necessarily dictate what the outcome's going to be. You can't dictate what the results are going to be, but you can do your best to put yourself in a position to overcome and champion them. So I think, yes, you have to be consistent. You have to show up. But like you said, it's put in the effort. And then when you put in that effort and you have a roadblock, when you take a L, dust yourself off, get up and do it again.
Yeah, you're either, so again, like you said, you're either like, winners and losers. We always think you're either winning or you're losing. So one of the instructors told me this. He said, you're either winning or you're learning.
Yeah.
I was like, that's the way to end it.
It is.
Good stuff today. Thank you for coming on, brother.
Hey, thanks for letting me come on.
All right. And until next episode, we will see y'all later.